Ethan stood in the crowded spaceport, the smell of oil, metal, and smoke filling the air. He had worked years on small jobs, fixing broken engines and carrying cargo for others, saving every credit he could. Today, he finally had enough to buy a ship of his own. His hands shook as he held the slip of papers, the contract signed, the money transferred. The ship was his. The vessel was not shiny, not new. It was an old freighter with scars of travel across dangerous space. Its hull was scratched, its engines patched many times before, but to Ethan it looked like freedom. The chance to leave behind the endless cycle of serving others. The chance to finally carve his own path. He whispered to himself, "This is it, my new beginning." The seller, a tall man with cold eyes, smiled too easily. He handed over the key chip quickly, almost too quickly, as if he was desperate to get rid of the ship. Ethan noticed it, but his excitement was too great. He told himself that old ships always came with problems, nothing unusual. He would fix whatever was broken. He was a mechanic, after all. As Ethan walked into the freighter for the first time, the air inside was stale. The metal walls echoed each of his footsteps. He ran his hand along the corridor, feeling the vibration of engines barely holding together. He didn't care. He already imagined upgrading, painting, and naming it. This ship would carry him to the stars. But as he explored deeper, something felt strange. The ship was too quiet, too empty. It was not the silence of a machine, but the silence of something hidden. In the cargo bay, several doors were sealed shut, one of them with heavy bolts and warning signs. Ethan frowned. Why would a freighter have a door locked from the outside? He tried to laugh it off. Probably old storage, maybe dangerous wiring, he muttered. Still, unease stayed with him. He decided not to open it yet. Not on the first day. He would wait until morning, when his mind was clearer. For now, he wanted to sleep on his ship, and dream of tomorrow. That night as he lay on the thin bunk. The ship groaned with old age. Pipes hissed and lights flickered. He was used to such sounds. But then he heard something else, faint and soft. A whisper or maybe a sob. His eyes opened. Heart racing, he sat up and listened. It came again. Muffled crying somewhere deep in the cargo bay. Ethan grabbed his lamp and walked through the dim corridors. Each step echoed louder than before. Shadows stretched across the walls. The sound grew clearer as he neared the locked door. He froze, pressing his ear against the cold metal. Yes, it was crying, soft and desperate. A child's voice. His throat went dry. Was someone trapped inside? His mind raced. Maybe stowaways, maybe criminals, or worse, maybe the reason the seller wanted to get rid of the ship so quickly. Ethan pulled back, unsure. If he opened it, he might step into something far bigger than he could handle. But if he didn't, then someone was suffering behind that door. He returned to his bunk, but sleep never came. The whispers echoed in his head. He remembered the look in the seller's eyes, the way he rushed the deal. Ethan cursed under his breath. He knew he could not ignore it. The next morning, tired but determined, Ethan stood before the sealed door. Again he ran his fingers across the heavy bolts. His tools clinked in his belt. He hesitated only a moment before kneeling down to work. Sparks flew as he cut through the locks. The door hissed as it began to slide open. Cold air rushed out. Inside, the room was dark and smelled of rust and dust. Ethan raised his lamp and his heart almost stopped. In the corner, curled up on the floor, was a woman, her skin faintly glowing blue under the light. Her arms wrapped around a small child with the same glow. Their eyes, wide and fearful, met his. Ethan stumbled back. He had never seen their kind before. They looked weak, starving, terrified. The child clung to his mother, hiding his face in her chest. The woman whispered in a trembling voice, words broken but clear. "Please, don't hurt us." Ethan stood frozen. His mind screamed with questions. Why were they here? Who were they running from? Why did the seller hide them? But one thought drowned the others. He had just bought a ship, and along with it he had inherited a secret that could change everything. And as the child's frightened eyes stared into his, Ethan realized one truth. This deal was not simple. It was not just a ship. It was the beginning of something far more dangerous, far more human. Ethan could not move at first. His lamp shook in his hand as the glow of the alien mother and child filled the room. The silence between them was heavy, broken only by the child's soft breathing and the faint hum of the ship's engines. The woman's eyes were large and filled with fear, but also with a quiet strength. She clutched the boy tighter, whispering words in a language Ethan could not understand. For a long moment, Ethan simply stared. He had dreamed of freedom, of adventure, but never of this. A mother and her child, hidden away like shadows in the dark corners of his ship. His ship. His mind spun with questions. How long had they been here? Why were they hiding? What danger followed them? The boy peeked out from his mother's arms. His face was pale and thin, as if he had not eaten properly for weeks. His glowing eyes widened at the sight of Ethan, but instead of crying, he just held onto his mother's hand tighter. The woman slowly raised her free hand as if begging for mercy. Her voice trembled. "Please, do not give us away." Ethan swallowed hard. He took a cautious step forward, lowering his lamp so it would not blind them. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said softly. His own voice felt strange in the quiet. He looked around the small chamber, seeing scraps of old cloth, a half-empty water bottle, and marks on the floor that showed they had been living there, hiding like prisoners. The mother's lips trembled as she tried to speak again, her words broken, her voice weak. No harm. We only hide." She placed her hand on her child's head as if to shield him from the world. Ethan's chest tightened. He was not a soldier, not a hero. He was just a mechanic who wanted a fresh start. But now fate had pushed something bigger. Onto his shoulders he knelt slowly, trying not to scare them. "My name is Ethan," he said, pointing at himself. Then he pointed at them gently. "Who are you?" The woman hesitated, her eyes searching his face for truth. Finally she spoke. "Seria." She touched her chest. "My son, Lero." The boy blinked at the sound of his name. Pressing closer, into her arms, Ethan repeated softly, "Seria, Lero." The names felt heavy with meaning. He asked carefully, "Why are you here? Who locked you in?" Seria's face darkened with pain. She looked at the floor as if afraid to say. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Hunters. We escape. They want us. No safe place." Her words were broken but clear enough. Ethan's stomach turned cold. Hunters. That explained the cellar. That explained the rushed deal. The ship had been carrying fugitives, not cargo. The boy coughed, his small body shaking. Seria held him tighter. Ethan noticed how thin they both were, hunger written on their faces. Without thinking, he reached into his pack and pulled out a ration bar. He tore it in half and offered it carefully. Seria stared at the food with suspicion, then slowly took it, breaking it into small pieces for her son. Lero chewed weakly, his glowing eyes softening for the first time. Something inside Ethan shifted at that moment. He had seen suffering before, on broken colonies, on poor stations where children begged for crumbs. But this was different. This was inside his ship, inside his life. He could not pretend he did not see. He could not simply walk away. Seria looked up after her son had eaten, her voice steadier now. "You, not tell them, please." Her eyes glistened with desperate hope. Ethan wanted to say yes, to promise, but his thoughts were storming. If he protected them, he would become a criminal. The galaxy had strict laws about harboring fugitives, hunters, would come after him too. His dream of freedom could turn into chains, but when he looked at Lero, the small boy leaning against his mother's arm with crumbs on his lips, Ethan's heart made the choice before his mind could. "I won't give you away," he said firmly. Seria's eyes widened, a tear sliding down her cheek. She whispered, "Thank you." Almost too soft to hear. The moment felt fragile, like glass that could break at any second. Ethan wanted answers, but he also knew they needed safety first. He stood and said, "You can't stay locked in here. It's not safe. Come, I'll find you a better place." Seria hesitated. But after a long pause, she rose, holding Lero in her arms. As they stepped out of the sealed chamber, Ethan felt the weight of the decision settle on his shoulders. The ship that was supposed to bring him freedom had now bound him to two lives that depended on him. The corridors no longer felt empty. They carried whispers of danger, footsteps of hunters, shadows of the past chasing them. Ethan led them to a small crew cabin, giving them blankets and water. As he left them to rest, he walked back to the cockpit, staring out at the endless stars. He knew this was only the beginning. Somewhere out there, hunters were already searching, already closing in. And Ethan, the man who only wanted to escape his old life, had just discovered that his new journey was tied to a secret far greater than he ever imagined, a secret that could cost him everything but one he could not turn away from. The ship drifted quietly through the stars, but Ethan's mind was far from calm. He sat in the cockpit staring at the endless black outside, his hands gripping the console. Every choice he had made until now had been simple. Fix an engine, move a cargo box, take the next job. But this was different. This was life and death, not only for him but for the two beings hiding in the cabin down the hall. Behind him, footsteps echoed lightly. He turned to see Saria standing there, her long blue skin glowing faintly in the dim light. She looked tired, her clothes worn thin, but her eyes held a kind of fire. In her arms, little Lero rested, his head against her shoulder, fast asleep. Saria stood silent for a while, as if she was afraid to speak. Finally, she whispered, "Thank you for not giving us away." Her voice cracked as she said it. Ethan rubbed the back of his neck, unsure how to respond. He was no hero. He hadn't thought this far ahead. He only knew he couldn't hand them over. Not after seeing the child's eyes, not after hearing their cries. Saria stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You need to know. If you keep us, danger will follow. Hunters will come. They will track us. They will kill you too if they must." Her words cut sharp. Ethan's jaw tightened. He already knew the risk, but hearing it spoken made the weight heavier. He looked at her and asked, "Then why? Why are they chasing you? What do they want from you and the boy?" Saria's grip on Lero tightened. She looked away, her face shadowed with pain. "Because of what we are," she whispered. "Our kind. Rare, hunted, sold as property. They call us trophies. They think we are less than life." Ethan felt a knot in his chest. He had seen slavery in the galaxy, but to hear it from her lips, to see her clutching her son as if the world wanted to tear him away, it filled him with anger. Saria met his gaze again, her eyes shining. "I beg you, Ethan, do not hand us to them. Please. I have nowhere left to run. And my child, he has done nothing wrong." Her words struck deep. Ethan could almost feel the fear she carried, not for herself but for Lero. He thought of the boy's small hands, the way he tried to smile even through hunger. He thought of Saria's trembling voice begging not for freedom but for mercy. "I won't hand you over," Ethan said firmly. His own voice surprised him, stronger than he expected. "But if hunters come, I can't fight them alone. I need to know what I'm facing." Saria nodded slowly as if she had been waiting for that answer. "They will not stop. They have ships, weapons, trackers. They trade lives like cargo. To them, I am worth money. To them, my son is a prize." She paused, her voice breaking. "To me, he is my whole world." Ethan looked at the sleeping boy. He remembered his own past, how he once had a little sister before sickness took her, how powerless he felt watching his parents break under the weight of grief. That memory still haunted him. And now, standing before him, was another family on the edge of being destroyed. He clenched his fists, determined not to let it happen again. The ship shuddered suddenly. Warning lights flickered across the cockpit. Ethan's eyes snapped to the radar. A signal blinked faintly, distant but moving closer. His heart skipped. "They've already found us," he muttered. Saria's face paled. She pressed Lero closer to her chest. Ethan worked the controls. diverting power to the engines. "We'll move fast, hide in the asteroid belt nearby," he said. His voice was calm, but inside his chest his heart raced like fire. Syria placed a hand on his arm, her eyes filled with tears. "You don't have to do this. You don't owe us. If you leave us at the next station, you will be safe." Ethan looked at her, then at the small boy breathing softly in her arms. He shook his head. "No, I can't do that. You're not cargo. You're not something to be traded. You're people, and no one deserves to be hunted like that." His words were sharp, his decision final. Syria's lips trembled. Her knees bent as if she might fall. She whispered, "Then you are the first human to ever say that to me." Tears slid down her cheeks, not of fear this time, but of a fragile hope. She bowed her head, whispering again and again, "Thank you." The signal on the radar beeped closer. Ethan tightened his grip on the controls. He knew danger was coming. The hunters would test him, would push him, but Syria's plea had planted something inside him, a promise that he would not betray. As the ship entered the shadows of the asteroid field, Ethan glanced back at Syria and Lero. The boy stirred in his sleep, his small hand reaching out and brushing against Ethan's sleeve as if by accident. That tiny touch burned into Ethan's heart, sealing his choice. The galaxy had marked them as prey, but as long as they were with him, they would not be alone. And Ethan knew, even if it cost him everything, he would fight to keep that promise. The stars outside the cockpit blurred as Ethan pushed the ship's engines harder than they had run. In years, the old freighter groaned in protest. Warning lights flickered on the control panel. But he did not ease up. Behind him, the radar beeped steadily, marking the hunter's ship closing in. Syria sat strapped into the seat behind him, her arms tight around little Lero. The boy was awake now, wide-eyed, his small fingers clutching. His mother's sleeve, he did not cry, but his glowing eyes showed his fear. Syria whispered softly to calm him, but her own voice shook. Ethan's jaw was set. Sweat rolled down his forehead as he steered toward the asteroid belt ahead. Huge rocks spun slowly in the void, casting long shadows across space. It was dangerous to enter. One mistake could smash the ship into debris, but it was the only chance to break the hunter's pursuit. "They're gaining," Syria said, her voice trembling. Ethan glanced at the radar again. The enemy ship was faster, newer, built for hunting. He cursed under his breath. "Hold on." The freighter dove into the field, weaving between massive spinning stones. The hull rattled as smaller rocks scraped past. Ethan gripped the controls tighter, his eyes darting across the screen. He had flown many ships in his life, but never with lives depending on him this much. The hunters followed, their weapons flashing. Bright beams of energy shot past the freighter, striking the asteroids and exploding them into smaller fragments. The blasts lit up the cockpit with blinding flashes. Lero covered his face against Syria's shoulder. Ethan twisted the freighter sharply, barely dodging another shot. "Can we outrun them?" Syria asked, fear heavy in her tone. Ethan shook his head. Not outrun, but maybe outsmart. His fingers flew across the controls, rerouting power, shifting shields to the rear. He knew this ship was old, but old ships also carried tricks, hidden codes in the system, functions forgotten by their makers. The hunters fired again, this time a bolt striking the ship's side. The freighter rocked violently, alarms screamed. Ethan's teeth clenched as he steadied the controls. "We can't take many more hits," he muttered. Syria tightened her hold on Lero, whispering prayers in her native tongue. Ethan spotted a cluster of asteroids tumbling together, their orbits tangled, forming a maze of shadows and rock. He grinned despite the danger. This is where we lose them. He shut down the ship's main lights and powered off the external systems, plunging the freighter into near darkness. The ship became another shadow drifting in the void. The hunters slowed, scanning. Beams of light swept across the asteroids. Searching, Ethan held his breath, his hands hovering over the controls. Syria sat frozen, afraid even the sound of her heartbeat would give them away. Lero pressed his face into her chest, trembling. Minutes stretched like hours. The hunters circled, firing random blasts into the rocks, hoping to shake them out. A small fragment slammed into the freighter's hull, the sound echoing like thunder through the corridors. Ethan winced, "Stay quiet, old girl," he whispered to the ship. Finally, the hunter ship passed farther away, its engines humming like a predator moving through the night. Ethan waited, forcing himself not to move too soon. His heart pounded in his ears. Then slowly the radar showed the hunters drifting out of range. Relief washed over him like a wave. He powered up the engines again, the lights flickering back. To life, Saria exhaled sharply, her shoulders shaking. She held Lero close, whispering, "Safe, for now." The boy's small voice whispered back, "Mama hungry." Ethan's chest tightened. He reached into the drawer and tossed another ration bar toward them. "Eat," he said gently. Saria caught it, her eyes meeting his. There was gratitude there, but also worry. She knew this escape was temporary. The hunters would not give up. They would track again. They always did. As the freighter cleared the asteroid field, Ethan sat back, his muscles aching from tension. He stared at the stars ahead, knowing the galaxy had suddenly grown smaller. Every station, every signal, every whisper could be a trap. He was no longer just a mechanic with a ship, he was now a fugitive by choice. Saria spoke softly. "You risked your life. Why? You don't even know us." Ethan looked at her, his face hard. "Because I've seen what happens when good people look away, I won't do that again." His words were steady, but inside he wondered how long he could keep this up. In the silence that followed, Lero reached out his small hand toward the control panel, touching the glowing lights with wonder. Ethan allowed himself a faint smile. The child was still curious, still alive, still holding on to a small piece of innocence even in the middle of fear. The radar beeped faintly again. Ethan's smile faded, another signal appeared, farther away but closing. The hunters were regrouping, or maybe more were coming. Either way, the chase was not over. Ethan leaned forward, his eyes sharp. "Then we keep moving," he said. Saria nodded, her arms still around Lero. In her eyes, Ethan saw fear, but also a new light, a fragile trust, a belief that maybe this human truly meant his promise. The engines roared as the freighter pushed deeper into the unknown. Shadows of danger followed close behind. The chase had only begun. The freighter drifted quietly now, hidden deep in the shadow of a forgotten mining station. Ethan had powered down most systems to avoid detection. The hum of the engines was gone, replaced by silence broken only by the soft breathing of those inside. For the first time since the chase, there was a moment of calm. Ethan sat at the small metal table in the mess cabin, turning a wrench in his hand. He was used to quiet, used to being alone. But now every sound reminded him he was no longer by himself. From the other side of the room came a soft laugh, high and innocent. He looked up and saw Lero, the small boy, trying to balance a spoon on his nose. Saria sat beside her son, watching him with tired eyes but also with a smile that softened her face. It was the first time Ethan had seen her look at peace. The boy dropped the spoon and giggled. Ethan felt something stir inside him, a warmth he had not felt in years. "You fixed this ship," Saria said softly, nodding at the humming lights above. "It feels safer now," Ethan shrugged. "It's held together with tape and luck, but it will fly." He set the wrench down, leaning back in his chair. "I've flown worse." Lero crawled across the table toward Ethan, his glowing eyes curious. He pointed at the wrench. "What is this?" Ethan picked it up and showed him. "It's for fixing things." He placed it gently in the boy's small hands. Lero struggled to lift it, grinning with effort. Saria started to protest, but Ethan shook his head. "Let him try." The boy laughed again as the wrench slipped from his hands. Ethan caught it before it hit the floor. For a moment, the cabin felt alive, not like a hiding place, but like a home. Ethan realized how much he had missed that feeling. He had spent years traveling alone, eating alone, sleeping alone. And now a child's laugh filled the silence. Saria's smile faded slowly, her gaze drifting to the metal walls. "I have not seen him laugh since we left our world," she whispered. Her voice cracked. He was always afraid, always hiding. Even in his sleep he would cry and cling to me when the hunters came, I thought. I thought he would forget how to smile. She looked at Ethan with wet eyes. But now, he laughs. Ethan shifted uncomfortably. He was not good with words, not good with comfort, but he managed to say, "He's safe here. As long as you're on my ship, no one will take him." His voice was firm. He meant it. Saria's lips trembled. She lowered her head, whispering, "Why do you help us, Ethan? You risk your life, your freedom. You owe us nothing." Ethan leaned forward, his elbows on the table. His eyes darkened with memory. "Because I know what it feels like to lose family. I know what it's like to watch and do nothing. I won't make that mistake again." His voice carried a quiet pain. Saria studied him, realizing there was more to this human than she first thought. Lero tugged at Ethan's sleeve suddenly, holding up a small piece of cloth he had been playing with. "Make a ship," he said eagerly. Ethan smiled faintly, taking the cloth and folding it into a rough little shape. "There, a ship," he said. Lero's eyes lit up. "It flies," he whispered, moving it through the air with his tiny hands. Saria chuckled softly, her hand brushing her son's hair. Ethan watched them, and for a moment, he forgot the hunters, forgot the danger. In that small room, there was only a mother, a child, and the quiet bond growing between them and him. Hours passed. Ethan showed Lero the cockpit, pointing at the blinking lights and explaining in simple words. The boy listened with wide eyes, asking questions. "What does this do? Can I press this? Can I fly?" Ethan laughed, shaking his head. "Not yet. Maybe one day." Saria stood behind them watching. Her face was soft, but her eyes carried a heavy truth. She knew the danger was not gone. She knew every smile could be the last. Yet she allowed herself this moment, allowed her son to dream. Later, as night cycle fell, Ethan returned to the mess cabin. Saria sat awake while Lero slept beside her. She whispered, "You have given him hope. I cannot repay you for that. But know this, Ethan. If the hunters come again, they will not stop. They will burn through stars to find us. They want my son more than anything." Ethan nodded slowly. "Then they'll have to go through me first." His words were steady, a promise sealed in fire. Saria looked at him for a long time, her eyes shimmering, then she whispered, "Maybe. You are the family we lost." Ethan froze at the words, his chest tightening. He had wanted freedom when he bought this ship, but what he had found was something far greater. In the silence of the freighter, as the child slept, and the mother's eyes softened with trust, Ethan realized the bond was no longer fragile. It was real, and that bond would soon be tested. For out in the dark, unseen on the scanners, the hunters were already preparing their next move. The freighter rattled as warning sirens screamed through the halls. Ethan sprinted to the cockpit, his heart pounding like a hammer. The radar glowed with red signals, 2 hunter ships faster and stronger closing in. He cursed under his breath. He had known they would come, but he had not expected them so soon. Saria rushed in behind him, clutching Lero tightly. Her eyes widened when she saw the screen. "They've found us," she whispered. Ethan nodded sharply. "And they won't stop until they have you." He slammed the controls, forcing the freighter into a sharp climb through empty space. The ship groaned, its old engines straining. Blasts of energy lit up the black void, beams slicing past the freighter's hull. One strike clipped the shields, sending a shudder through the corridors. Lero cried out, hiding his face against his mother. Ethan gritted his teeth. "Hold on, I'll get us through this." But deep inside, he knew the truth. His ship was too old, too weak. It could not outrun hunters built for war. He had one chance. He had to outthink them. And if that failed, he had to make a choice no man should ever face. The hunters opened a channel, a cold voice filling the cockpit. "Human pilot, surrender. The fugitives deliver the mother and child, and we may spare your life." The voice dripped with arrogance. Saria froze, her arms tightening around Lero, her glowing eyes filled with terror. Ethan stared at the screen, then switched on the comm. His voice was steady, though his chest felt heavy. "You'll have, to kill me first." The reply came quick. "That can be arranged." The hunters fired again, shaking the freighter with violent force. Sparks rained from the ceiling. Alarms blared louder. Ethan fought to keep the ship steady. His vision blurred with sweat, his hands blistering on the controls. Saria's voice broke through the chaos. "Ethan, leave us. If you hand us over, you will live. You have no reason to die for us." Her words were desperate, but her eyes showed she had already accepted her own fate. She would sacrifice herself if it meant saving her son. Ethan turned, his face hard. "Don't say that. I'm not giving you up, not now, not ever." His voice carried the weight of every loss he had lived through. He thought of his sister, of the family he could not save. He would not fail again. Another blast rocked the freighter. Panels burst into flames. Ethan slammed a switch, flooding the ship with emergency foam to douse the fire. He glanced at Saria. "Take him. Get to the escape pod." She shook her head fiercely. "Not without you," Ethan growled. "Don't argue. His life comes first." Saria clutched Lero, tears streaming down her face. She knew he meant it. He was ready to sacrifice everything for them, but her heart rebelled. She could not lose him too, not after he had given them hope. The hunters drew closer, their weapons charging for a final strike. Ethan's eyes narrowed. He rerouted all power into the engines and shields. The ship trembled. Lights flickered out one by one. The old freighter was burning itself alive. Ethan whispered to the controls, "Come on, old girl." One last fight. He dove the ship straight into a dense cluster of asteroids, weaving through deadly rocks as plasma fire rained down. The hunters followed, confident. Their ships were faster. But Ethan knew every vibration of his freighter, every weakness and strength. He used the debris to shield himself, ducking behind stones as beams exploded around him. Then Ethan saw it, a massive asteroid split in two, its core glowing with unstable energy. One wrong blast could ignite it like a bomb. He grinned grimly. "That's it?" He spoke quickly to Saria. "When I tell you launch the escape pod, take Lero and run, don't look back." She shook her head again, tears falling. "Ethan," but he cut her off. "Promise me, Saria. Promise me you'll protect him. You're his mother, you're his world." His voice broke for a second, then hardened again. "Go when I say." Ethan steered the freighter into the asteroid's crack, the hunters chasing close. He cut power, suddenly making the ship drift like wreckage. The hunters roared closer, preparing to fire the killing shot. That was when Ethan slammed the last switch. The freighter's engines roared back to life, blasting sparks into the unstable asteroid. "Wall!" The rock ignited with a deafening flash. Light swallowed the void. The hunters were caught in the explosion, their ships ripped apart by the chain reaction. Fire and stone filled the dark as Ethan's ship spun wildly from the blast. Saria screamed, his name as she clung to Lero. The freighter shook violently, hull tearing apart in places. Ethan fought to keep control, his hands bleeding on the controls. He had saved them, but at a terrible cost. Smoke filled the cockpit, alarms blared. Ethan slumped forward, his breath ragged. "Escape pod," he gasped. His vision darkened. "Go now." Saria rushed to, him grabbing his arm. "Not without you." But Ethan pushed her away weakly. "Take him. Live." His voice faded like a whisper. Saria's tears fell onto his hand as she held it tight. Her heart broke at his sacrifice. The boy clung to her, sobbing. She had no choice. She had to save her son. But even as she moved toward the pod, she swore in her heart she would not abandon Ethan, not after what he had done for them. The explosion faded into silence, leaving only wreckage and drifting shadows in the stars. But inside that broken freighter, the bond they had built burned stronger than ever. And Saria knew. Ethan's sacrifice had only just begun. The freighter drifted in silence, its hull, scarred and torn. Smoke curled through the broken vents, sparks hissed from shattered panels. In the cockpit, Ethan lay slumped forward, his hand still gripping the controls. His chest rose weakly, every breath a struggle. He had given everything. To protect them, Syria knelt beside him, tears streaming down her glowing face. "Ethan, stay with me," she whispered. Her hands pressed against his shoulder, trying to stop the bleeding. Her son, Lero, clung to her leg, his wide eyes filled with fear. "Mama, is he going to die?" the boy asked in a trembling voice. Syria could not answer. Her heart broke. Ethan's eyes flickered open, his lips curved faintly into a tired smile. "Still, here," he whispered. His voice was hoarse, weak but alive. Relief flooded Syria's chest. She held his hand tightly. "You saved us. You burned your ship for us," she said. Ethan coughed, his laugh rough. "Ship's tougher than it looks, but I don't know how much longer she'll hold." The freighter's systems were failing, power was fading, alarms warned of life support running low. Syria looked around desperately. Her eyes caught the blinking light of the long-range beacon. Damaged but still active, she turned to Ethan. "We must send a signal or we will drift until the air runs out." Ethan shook his head faintly. "A signal could bring them back, hunters, scavengers." His eyes closed, then opened again. "But maybe it's our only chance." His voice faded to a whisper. "Do it." Syria moved quickly, her hands flying across the broken console. She rerouted power from the failing lights into the beacon. With a deep breath, she pressed the switch. A soft pulse began to echo through the void, a call for help. She only hoped someone kind would answer. Hours passed in silence. Lero curled against Ethan's side, holding the human's arm as if afraid. To let go, Ethan lay still, fighting to stay awake. Syria sat between them, her heart torn between fear and hope. Then the radar blinked. A ship was approaching. Syria's heart leapt. She shook Ethan gently. "Someone is coming." His eyes half opened. "Pray it's not them," he whispered. The approaching vessel slowed, its lights sweeping over the wreckage. Then a voice came through the comm. "Unknown freighter, we received your signal. Do you require assistance?" Relief washed over Syria. She answered quickly. "Yes, please, we are damaged. We have wounded. We need help." The voice replied, steady and calm. "Hold tight. We are coming aboard." Minutes later, the sound of docking clamps echoed through the hull. The airlock hissed open. Figures stepped inside. Traders, not hunters. Their leader, a broad man with kind eyes, looked around at the damage. His gaze settled on Ethan bleeding in the cockpit. "Get him to medbay now," he ordered. His crew lifted Ethan carefully, carrying him to safety. Syria held, Lero close as they followed, her heart trembling with relief. They had been saved not by luck, but by the man who refused to give them up. Days later, Ethan awoke in a clean bed aboard the trader's vessel. His wounds were wrapped, his body weak but alive. The first thing he saw was Syria sitting beside him. Lero curled asleep on her, up. When she saw his eyes open, tears of joy filled hers. She whispered, "You came back to us." Ethan's voice was faint but steady. "Told you. I don't break promises." Syria reached for his hand, holding it tight, her glowing eyes soft with gratitude. "You gave everything for us. You should have left us. But you did not." Ethan shook his head weakly. "I didn't just save. You saved me too." His gaze drifted to the boy, sleeping peacefully. "I was alone before, but not anymore." Syria's lips trembled, her voice low. "Then stay with us. Be part of us, not as protector only, but as family." Ethan felt warmth spread through him. He had dreamed of freedom when he bought a ship, but what he found was something far greater. He nodded slowly. "Family," he whispered. When Lero woke, he climbed onto Ethan's bed, smiling wide. "You're not leaving," the boy said. Ethan chuckled softly, wincing at the pain in his chest. "No, kid, not leaving. You're stuck with me now." The boy laughed, hugging him tightly. Syria watched, her heart full. For the first time in years, hope filled her soul. The traders repaired what they could of Ethan's freighter, but the old ship would never be the same. Still, when Ethan stepped aboard again with Saria and Lero at his side, it did not feel like a broken ship anymore. It felt like home. Together, they looked out at the stars, Ethan's arm around Saria, Lero holding his hand. Their journey was not over. Hunters still searched. Dangers still lurked. But now they faced it as one. A human, an alien mother, and her child. Bound not by blood, but by sacrifice and choice. And as the engines rumbled, to life, carrying them into the vast unknown, Ethan whispered to himself, "This isn't the end. It's the beginning."